Good evening, everyone. It is another meeting of the Wellington Board of Education. This one is a special meeting. It is, I don't even have the date in front of me. It is
Right.
September 19th, I believe, right? At 6:31 p.m. This is a special meeting to discuss the educational specifications for any school building project that we might have. We're calling the meeting to order right now, and we're going to start with present to speak. If you're in the audience and you'd like to give us some feedback, we'd love to hear it. Just come on the video screen or take yourself off mute. Unlike our regular meetings where we have present to speak at both the beginning and the ends of the meetings, because this is a special meeting, we're only going to have this one portion at the front of this meeting, but we always welcome public comment. And typically in our regular meetings, we would have it at the beginning and end. So our next meeting is October 11th. So if folks have thoughts, they can reach out to us then. Okay, so moving on to the main agenda item, which is the educational specifications. It's all yours, Phil.
Thanks. So I shared this afternoon, I shared this document that I'm going to put on screen here. I'll share my screen, obviously. And our goal really for tonight is I want to make sure we can, if we can, agree on where we are currently as of today, what we think the square footage is, based upon your feedback from last meeting and making some adjustments. I don't think the square footage is going to change, and I'll show you why. And the reason we need the square footage is so I can go have another conversation with the state regarding what we currently have in our ed spec for square footage and what we're allowed for maximum reimbursement. And so that's really why the square footage is important, not necessarily finalizing every detail about what's in every space today, as long as you agree the square footage of that space is what we're looking for. Okay. So let me share my screen. Hi, Tracy. Didn't see you before.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to start on page 11. The first thing that I wanted to point out on this page was we had talked, there was some feedback about teacher workroom and lunchroom and having separate spaces. One is 500 square feet, one is 800 square feet. The 800 square foot one here was so that if we needed an extra classroom in grades 1 through 4, we could steal it out of that space. So it would be in that group together. Looking at the square footage and trying to break these out, you still, even though it's on your ed spec, you could make one room the lunchroom or one room the workroom. It doesn't matter as long as the square footage is there. So as long as you're not looking to change the square footage to 800 and 800, it can live the way it is. Are you okay with that?
You're talking about the teacher workroom?
Correct. So I put teacher workroom and lunch at here, and that one's 800, and this one, oops, I can't highlight. This one here is 500. And with those two, the point was like they should have a workroom and then they should have a lunchroom. There's nothing to say we can't do that with what's written here, is the point. It's just the square footage that I'm looking at. I could easily remove the word lunch from one and room from the other, and it would be the same as long as you're not looking to change the square footage. Okay.
So the question is, if we needed to use that teacher workroom lunch that's 800 square feet for a backup classroom, is the 500 square foot for the other one big enough for both the lunchroom and the workroom?
Yes, and what you'd end up doing is utilizing resource room spaces, these types of spaces here for like copiers or things like that,
Okay.
the laminator, things like that.
So you'd put the workroom equipment someplace else and it would turn into basically more of a lunchroom.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just the flexibility of those spaces.
I'm okay with that as long as there's a plan, because you never know. The one problem people have is they build a school and then there's a development, a new apartment building, and then they can't fit all the kids.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So the question is, if we needed to use that teacher workroom lunch that's 800 square feet for a backup classroom, is the 500 square foot for the other one big enough for both the lunchroom and the workroom?
Yes, and what you'd end up doing is utilizing resource All right, so just yell if you want me to stop because I'm going to try and keep cranking here.
Yep.
So the next thing I wanted to show you, we talked about, and Brianna, you were asking about this, the number of music spaces without adding another classroom. And the conversation that was around the common area with the loud banging and things like that with the steam room and the maker space in the library. I merged a couple spaces, and I think it makes sense to do that because STEAM is not going to be, and this is what the state's going to look at. They want to make sure if you put a space in that you're going to maximize the amount of time you're going to use that space. So there's still the 800 square feet on the stage as your chorus room. If you have a show going on, you could also use your steam room, and it's built into that. And you'll see it when I go into the detail there. That would be a secondary space, or depending on schedules and the number of staff that we have for music, that could be adjusted. All right. So you'd have the instrumental music, the steam chorus room, and the chorus stage. And that would be 3 full spaces. Again, with the flexibility that the state's not going to, they're going to say, how many music rooms do you really have that are, and are they going to be used all day long? If the answer is no, they're going to frown upon it, if that makes sense.
Now, these instrumental music areas and practice rooms, are they right off of the stage?
So though the idea is that the instrumental music and the chorus, steam chorus, are near those spaces, yes.
By near, you mean they can walk from the stage?
It's quick, yeah. Yep.
Is that instrumental storage going to be enough?
Yeah, because a lot of our instruments don't stay in this, the kids take them home.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have to make sure I have written in here is, and I have it on my notes, is that anytime, depending on how this moves forward and square footage and what's said, if the auditorium turns into a gymatorium or a cafetorium, no auditorium, then basically what will happen is the language would change to say the chorus stage is fine, because that would be now a gym stage, however you say it. And the steam room, chorus room, would just be near the gym as opposed to, or the cafeteria, if that makes sense. Same thing with instrumental music.
But could you still have chorus on the stage if it were part of the gym?
Yes, it's exactly what we saw in Talland, and it was very, very well done.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the soundproofing. That's probably the biggest key
Right.
in this.
Yeah.
And that's what's in the ed spec.
Okay.
The other piece that came up, and I kind of questioned myself on, was one intervention room. Oh goodness, that's going to drive me crazy. Is this right here is the intervention room, and I have one in there. Again, it's a full-size space at 800 square feet. It provides you some flexibility if it has to be used as a classroom. Kids that are receiving tier 3, the highest level of academic support, tend to go out to an intervention space. But we also have in here, we also have these resource rooms, resource spaces, and we also have breakout areas. So we have other areas that they could go to. This would kind of be the, sorry, where'd I go?
Right there.
This would be the intervention kind of home base. And I'll share more when I get to the written part of that, but I think one would be fine, even though right now at center, the reading and math intervention is share a room. And then at hall, there's a math kind of, we'll call it an office, and then a smaller classroom that is for ELA. We could easily put them into small groups with movable areas and do small group instruction. So it's without, again, adding additional square footage on top of where we already are. And there are other areas that we can use. I feel confident with one space here.
So that intervention is not office space where the interventionists have their offices. It's places where students come for instruction.
It's a little bit of both, Michelle. It's where their desks would be. but you could, just like, you put a desk, cut a classroom into quarters, and each person would have a quarter. And really, because when you're going out to tier 3 intervention, you're in a very small group. Maybe you're at a max 5 if the needs align. Typically, sometimes they're 1-to-1, 1-to-3. And so you don't need a huge space. We're talking about spaces where it's a smaller table and chairs.
Are there,
The,
I'm sorry, Herb, let me finish
no,
my
go
last
ahead,
question
go ahead.
related. Are there options for dividing up a room like that soundproofs it into quarters, for example?
No, there are, but I talked to Scott Pellman about it from Colliers, and he said, look, those walls are very expensive. He said, and the problem is people put them in and they never use them. And so you spend a fortune to be able to divide a room and then not use it. The only spot where he said maybe it would be worth it is if you were if like in Tolland, they have the stage, then they have the gym, and then they have the cafeteria. They have a portable wall between the cafeteria and I say portable, it just moves, and the gym. That opens up can open up a huge space. That's where he said, that's where it makes sense. But in smaller classrooms, he said, people put them in and they just sit there.
But there's nothing stopping us from down the road, should we find that it's a problem, that we could put into CIP, a couple $1,000s to build a non-load bearing wall if we needed to.
I don't see why not.
Okay, then I'm okay with that. Herb had his hand up next, Tracy, and then you next.
Phil, what is the rationale behind the fact that a lot of the classrooms, science room, the foreign language room, some of them are around 8,000 square feet, but in special education, they're half that size. The self-contained classroom, for example, is 400 square feet, and self-contained classroom is 350. It would seem to me that they would need a room the same size as the regular classroom, even though it is a special ed.
Typically not. So, and this is what's interesting about when you start doing the square footage. You're going to see spaces like the science labs that are larger because of tables and countertops that you need in there. If you have a hood in there, those tend to be larger, and those are the recommendations that are coming from Colliers.
I understand that, but the regular, like a language, foreign language classroom is 8,000.
800. So the foreign language is a typical size, 800. A typical classroom size for 22 students is between 800 and 900 square feet. And the reason that the special ed spaces are smaller is because you have smaller numbers of kids. And so when you only have, groups of 8, you cut your square footage down. And that's why those spaces are smaller. When you have, and I'll get to this section down here, is the self-contained classroom with a toilet room. That's a smaller space very intentionally. It's the way they're intended to be. Small group instruction, that's pull-out instruction, and then self-contained classrooms. There's 4 of them at 350 square feet. That's intentional. You want those smaller classes when you have, learners that have very, very specific needs per their IEP. That's why. The ones that are 150 is just basically an office. It's a small office.
So just to clarify, it's not that the foreign language classroom is too big, it's that the special education ones are smaller.
Yep, and they're sized based to need. It's
Okay.
typical.
Yep. Tracy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to your question, Michelle. As an interventionist, I've worked in a room up, there's been 4 or 5 of us in a room with small groups of kids. And currently I chose to share a room with someone, and we have groups of 4 or 5 back to back in the same classroom. And sometimes it gets a little bit distracting, but for the most part, if you ask the kids to be quiet, it works out well. And if there's those extra rooms to go to for when it's necessary, it works.
Right, that would only be a problem if somebody were already using the pull-out space in the hallways and the other flex space. Got it. Okay, Laura, I saw your hand next, and then Brianna.
So I was just wondering, you have the intervention room is the larger one is 800, so it could be used as a classroom if needed.
Correct.
If it is needed, do we have enough other space for special ed?
So this is where principals make decisions. And so I would typically not get involved and tell them what space. They would look at it. So they could look at foreign language and say, unfortunately, we're going to take the foreign language and we're going to move that to a cart. And that person's going to go to each kid's homeroom as opposed to kids traveling to a space. So there are other spaces, STEAM chorus, the foreign language room. We built in, I think, an extra classroom here in the teacher workroom. There are spaces that with that 800 square feet you could use. It's just what's the easiest thing we could do, and really what's going to not impact instruction. It's what's going to impact it the least.
Okay, so yeah, that was actually my next question about the foreign language room. So it's going to depend at that time. You have a lot of different flexibility rooms that you could use, and it's just going to depend the situation at that time, which one is the best option to become a classroom.
Correct. And, even though there's a foreign language room, it might be that, some of the time that foreign language is actually taught in the elementary classroom, and the remainder of the middle school model, maybe it's 4 through 8 or 3 through 8 is actually in that space. It depends on what they're doing. Anyone who's ever taught on a cart knows it's a bit of a nightmare. And, hopefully the state realizes that, because, this is an area where they could go, well, look at that person could be on a cart. That person can be on a cart. Intervention can just go to the classroom. To bring your materials and set things up, it is a super inefficient way to do business. It really is. It's inefficient.
I completely agree. I did high school science on a cart. It was a nightmare. So.
Brianna?
When we're talking about special education spaces and intervention spaces versus typical classrooms, I just want to make sure we clarify that students who receive interventions, including special education, spend as much time as possible in their regular classrooms with their peers. And in fact, some supports are push in, so the service provider goes into the classrooms to work with those children. I just wanted to make sure that was clear so that we don't have anyone misunderstanding and thinking that we have very small rooms for students with special needs, because that is not the case. That's just where they go for a portion of their day to receive those services.
Thank you, Brianna. That's an important clarification. Sometimes people watching this on video afterwards might not understand the way the schools work as well as those of us who are doing this all the time do. So that's important.
Yes.
Okay, keep going, Phil.
Okay, so let me go through. I think I went through all these last time. The Learning Commons, I took out the word makerspace out of here. And really the thought is, and I had a conversation with Scott Pellman about this, is that I think the way we were approaching, and I was approaching the look of this, was the Learning Commons. The Learning Commons is a little bit of a quieter space with a TV studio. There can still be a makerspace in here, but think like Lego wall, 3D printer. It's a side space, Lego robotics. This is not the STEAM room that might have the louder, maybe motors or things like that. Things like the hammering, that would be out of the STEAM room. The kitchen would be out of the STEAM room. This is a much quieter space. That's typically what he's seen. So it could still be a makerspace, but think like, paper and I don't know, it could be anything that's a little bit simpler and quieter. Right now we have Lego robotics that you could build them and they're not loud. It's just spaces to do that. The louder space was the other one. Good.
That makes sense.
This is the last one. This is the
On that last one, on the public toilet rooms, for example, do we provide for handicap people in? That's part of the construction and
Correct.
automatic.
ADA is a requirement. Yep.
Is that enough room for it? We have 3,300 square feet.
That's the number he gave me, so I'm assuming it meets the ADA requirement, yes.
Hmm. Okay.
This, and I showed you this net program total last time, 64,744. If you see what you see above this line is your program, then you have your service areas and grossing factor, and that's what that 18,000 is. I'm going to be honest with you. This is all straight from Scott Pellman. I get those square footages straight from him about what you need for an IT workroom, what you need for an MDF, IDF, all of these things. And so I looked at several other ed specs, other towns, including Mansfield, and we're directly in line to what is here. And so this is the one area that you do not have yet that's not spelled out. There's only a couple things that I spelled out so far, because I need to find out if this, like, to what detail, fire protection services do I need to spell out? That's not clear yet from the state. So I'm going to ask when I meet with them. Okay, let me scroll down. So let me get to the new stuff.
On that last one,
Yep.
Phil, do we have any provision for bathrooms for the maintenance crew? I noticed we have a locker and closets and storage, general storage.
I think there's a solo bathroom that's by their office, a unisex solo bathroom.
Mhm.
It might not be tied to right here, but I believe there's one. And that's it's weird because, sorry to make you dizzy. It's gonna fall in this section. No, it's not. It's gonna fall in this section right here where it goes. You'll see single user toilet, faculty toilet rooms. You're gonna see toilet room with shower, staff toilet. Those are kind of spread. Some of them are in the office. They're in a variety of different spaces.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that we have the fire protection service, the square footage of 150 square feet for fire protection. How about security itself? Do we, looking through all of the different areas, have we provided for security, like building of entrance ways? That would require square footage too, wouldn't it? At every door, we have an area that would be set off as a security area.
That's what this 30% is right here. So when you see this approximately 30%,
Where's that?
that's based upon
Oh.
your grossing factor for walls, stairs, and corridors, and they build that into that. And he wrote guesstimate 15,000 square feet, but the approximate for all the service areas and grossing factor is 18,000 square feet, and that would take your double vestibule into consideration, the proper width of hallways, things like that, Herb.
Okay, so that 16,000 is really about 18,000.
It's the grossing factor of everything above it, or the size of the
Includes
size.
everything?
Sorry, it's the grossing factor of the size of the building where it's the based upon the ed spec that's above.
Okay.
Laura?
I was just wondering about the custodial outdoor storage and why that's included in the ed specs of the building.
It's actually indoors, but it's an outdoor access point, if that makes sense.
So the door is on the outside.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
And
Phil,
Phil, this,
Go ahead, Herb.
excuse me, this
ahead.
covers the square footage of the new building. Did we consider solar panels at all at any point? 'Cause a lot of
Yes.
the new school buildings are including solar panels, and that would be an additional cost, of course, but
It's built into this as the way it's written, it basically says because you could do geothermal too, and basically you write it as the best use of power that you can. There's different certifications that you have to have when you build a new school, or renovate a school. And so it's just to what level you would want to do it. And in this area, even though you don't see this yet, this is the area where you would see the potential for energy savings, we'll call it. And
That
it's
would be
actually,
That would be an option then, over and above the regular construction itself, the building.
correct.
itself.
Correct. I
So
think
we
there
would
was-
provide that as an option, would we, or?
Yeah,
decide-
it's in the text here, Herb, in the beginning of the building codes and standards. It talks about what building codes and standards, and basically in the text, we just said, should meet or exceed the Connecticut high performance building standards. And that's actually a requirement from the state. So, you can consider these things. It doesn't mean you have to do it. And it might be about the dollar, right? So renewable energy
Yeah.
sources, net zero standards are great, but they are not free. Let's be honest.
But if we decide to do that, would we, that would be a side item like the auditorium or?
Nope, it would be part of this. And so what they can do is if this goes through as, let's say they decide on a new building through the school building committee. And the way the ed spec is written is that you could consider that. What they would do is they say, okay, the cost of this building is X number of dollars. To add geothermal and solar panels, it would be this amount instead. And that's the way they would look at it.
Yeah. That would be reimbursable.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we probably would not have to add too much square footage for that because it would be on the roof. And the only thing you might need is a little whatever generator, whatever they use. I don't know what they. So it wouldn't affect our square footage if we
No.
did that? Okay.
It would not. All of that is built into that grossing area and what you have for your spaces.
I know, Phil, that you've been to visit a number of schools. One of the things about using standard amounts, especially for storage, is that you all end up with the same inadequate amount of storage. So I'm wondering if you asked any of the superintendents what they would have changed if they were doing it again. Because I think that's a really essential question, because I hear all the time when I'm in school buildings, I wish there were more space for storage.
That was the biggest, and it wasn't superintendents that would see it, to be honest with you, it was the teaching staff. When we were at Birch Grove, that was one of the things we heard was
Mhm.
some said it was okay. The built-ins and having the other spaces, obviously it shrinks the room a little bit, but that's really critical. The killer again about some of these things and the adding this storage is just you're adding to your square footage. It's a killer, but I agree.
There's
You-
never enough storage.
You never can
Yeah.
have enough storage. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
actually built it under, and you'll see that tonight. I built it under the stage as additional storage. It's not in the classroom, but storage is a big
Right,
deal.
wherever we can loft and do creative things, I understand that, but there is an element of you just need enough square footage. If you're taking the storage out of every hallway, out of every classroom, and you're doing it all as built-ins, you're cutting down the amount that's actually needed to run the classroom. So I know we've just gone past that pretty quickly, but I would strongly suggest you increase your storage amounts. And if it's not like we're adding on a whole nother classroom. I'm not saying add in 800 square feet of storage. I'm just saying, I can't imagine the state is gonna push back and say you can't have an extra closet.
Are you thinking about where would you do that, Michelle? The common storage areas? Like this is a hallway common storage area. So pre-KK would have a space. 1 through 4 would have a space. Is that what
Right,
you're-
So the question is, when you're giving this to an architect or someone to figure out how to fill things in, the question is do you want the storage actually in the classroom as a built-in, in which case maybe you need to add in an extra 50 square feet to each classroom, or do you want it, so it's the same thing, it's the same 200 feet. Do you have 200 feet, 50, 50, 50, 50, or do you have 200 square feet that then is a closet that then everybody has to use and have access to through a door? So the question in general isn't that, I don't care how you do it, whether it's, you know, more built-ins, more square footage, more closets. Even if it were, you guys have done really creative things with storage in the cafeteria. You know, you've got the books there, and you've got, you know, you guys have been really creative with that. What's important for storage is that it's accessible to everybody when they need it, and they're not disrupting another class or having to go too far from the class where they, if they needed it something fast, right? So if there's adequate storage in the classroom, then the extra pieces can go in the hallway that people can share in common storage areas like this, and that can work out fine. So the how it happens isn't as important as that it happens to me.
So the folks that are, I don't see all your faces, but it seems like everybody else is on, sorry, Michelle, except for you. I think everybody else has been in the classroom or is in a classroom. So I don't know what your thoughts are, other folks, as far as, you know, is the hallway storage better, or is it?
Brianna's got her hand up. She's got thoughts.
Oh my gosh, I would love a hallway storage area to share with the early childhood team. We do themes, for example, our dramatic play center changes all the time. Sometimes it's a dentist's office, sometimes it's a veterinarian's office, and I have to keep all of that stuff in my room no matter what. So if we could even share those materials in big bins, and I'm gonna have this one this week or whatever, then we set it up, we bring the rest of the stuff to the closet, whatever. There's games we could share. There are a lot of other things that I think that would work really well for things I don't need in my room all the time. I need lots of construction paper in my room. I need games and puzzles in my room, but there's also a bunch of stuff that I don't need in there all the time that I would love to just get out of there.
There's shared materials that can be shared and used in all the classrooms, which is wonderful. If you have
Right, yeah,
common
like
storage
as
area
it
that way.
is now, we all try to have this, we have the same game, but we don't really need to purchase it 3 times.
Right.
If it was somewhere more central, then that would save us that way too.
That
So
makes
I
sense.
think storage in the classroom is important, but having that closet, I think, would be a dream personally.
Laura, I see your hand.
I would agree with that. And I have, as you know, science, right? So I had the lovely big science classroom at Hall, lots of storage plus the chem closet, which was great that was a separate closet that could be locked and keep all of the chemicals very safe from the students. When I was down at the STEM school, I had lots of storage in my room, but we also had the hall closets for materials that could be shared between the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science teachers. You know, ones that you would only pull in for a particular unit. So I definitely see the value in both.
Anne, and then Herb.
Yep, and you can also in the classroom, you can be very creative. If you have a sink, you know, it makes sense to put a counter and put shelves above it and below it, and, you know, bookcases wherever you can, and the way you build in the kids' lockers or little storage areas. So I think that's very important too. So if you could do the combination of the both, that would be ideal.
Herb, I saw your hand up before.
You know, if you go through the specs, I think that the superintendent has provided for storage in almost every area. The PKK area, there's 200 square feet. In the grade 1 through 4, there's a common storage area of another 200 square feet. Grades 5 and 8, there's a common storage area. Custodians have a storage area. In the gymnasium under the stage, there's storage areas, and also in the specialized room. So it's not that storage is not being provided. It depends on how much you really need and really want.
Right. So right now for teachers,
you
there's
also
three.
You
There's
also have core storage space in the classroom, so that
Mhm.
I think you have to look at this carefully to see just how many storage areas you want. I agree that there are, you could always use more, but how much is that, you know?
What if we split, and honestly, this is one thing I looked at, because pre-KK has one storage area that's 200 square feet, and then grades 1 through 4 has one that's 200 square feet. What if we did a 1-2 at 200, a 3-4 at 200, a 5-6 at 200, and a 7-8 at 200? You're
I think that would be
increasing-
fair because that's still 6 or 8 teachers all sharing a closet.
I mean, you're increasing your square footage by 400 feet, but square feet. But I mean, until you,
I think that you will not regret that decision.
I agree.
I
Yeah,
would
you-
argue
you
that
would.
some,
You wish
Great.
you would have more.
Yeah. Brianna, what were you going to say?
just saying that some grade levels have more stuff.
Big
and
stuff.
Bigger stuff. So
Are you saying that the pre-K closet should be 300 square feet because you guys have so much bulky stuff?
listen, we're not gonna argue about fair closet size. I'm just saying we have lots of
I mean, you
stuff.
go with the unequal closet, somebody's going to be jealous of your closet, you know.
Hey,
It's by teacher. It's not by, it can be any grade. It can be any content area. I'm just gonna say that much.
As long as science gets the most.
You have your own office between your science labs. You can't ask for any more.
we
Okay.
take all the
Do we have a
subjects.
chem closet?
It's within the middle. Yes.
Okay, good.
All right.
Keep
So
going
then,
then.
so then in the grand scheme of things, we just upped our square footage by 400 square feet. All
Mhm.
right.
So it's 1,000 now? 1,000 square feet? Is that?
I don't know what it was, but
We
I'm
added-
looking at the total, and I'm looking
We
at
added 2 storage closets.
I'm looking at
Okay.
83,234 now,
Me too.
Okay, 83. Thank you.
if my math is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let me get down to, so we talked about early childhood last time. I wanted to get into some of the things that we adjusted. And again, sorry for making you dizzy. Oh, I wanted to show you one of the things I did that's new. I didn't like having to go back and forth between this, what's on your screen, and then the explanation underneath. So
Yeah.
what I did is I copied it in. So when we're talking about academic classrooms, you can see the square footage right here for this area, and then all the write-ups for
There.
each.
Hmm.
Okay.
Thank you,
Now-
that's helpful.
I didn't like explain what was in a common storage area. I don't think that's needed. But any space where I thought, hey, we might have to, you have to defend this. What is this space? It's in there. So the green just means we went through it last time. And so what I added in here, I added in this teacher workroom, lunchroom, breakout areas, and resource rooms. And so this is a total of 3,500 square feet. It does the breakdown of what those rooms are. And it has the number of breakout areas and resource rooms. So close to teams is important when you start talking about this, because to be able to have a breakout area, you have to be close to your classroom. And same thing with a resource room. They really need to be close to your classrooms. Bathrooms are nearby, sinks are pretty straightforward. And then I just broke these 3 out. So if it's, and here's our storage comments, a built-in upper and lower cabinets. I think that's really important. The more we can add that storage within the room, the better. The breakout areas, picture a bench, a typical bench that's open-sided on one side, that you could put things in it, kind of like a cubby, could be books, could be whatever materials they want to prep in the hallway. And that would be in the breakout area. And then the resource spaces, remember, are small. It's a smaller office type space. So you might have a built-in there, and a lockable wardrobe. Lighting is pretty consistent throughout. Flooring is relatively consistent throughout. As far as, if it's a workroom, you want the vinyl. If the breakout area is part of the hallway, you want the tile. And then the resource room would be wall-to-wall carpeting, small spaces. They still have bulletin boards and whiteboards. And then these are the kind of the materials that would go in that teacher room. So the die press, the letter cutting machine there, laminating, pretty straightforward. The copiers are in there. And then the breakout areas are important, and it's the variety of movable, comfortable seating options. Some of that is built into the classroom that can be taken out and then brought back to their classroom. So it's not an additional set, but to be able to have, just picture kids sitting in the hallway. Do they have something they can sit on in the hallway in these breakout areas and do some group work in a small group? And then the resource room is small. It's going to have just typically a small teacher desk and then a round table with 4 chairs.
Is the resource room never used by kids?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Resource rooms typically, you might have, and again, this is the reason for that flexible furniture, to be able to pick up a stool, a wobble stool and bring it in, or the disc seat and bring it and sit on the floor. That's the idea of bringing those from the classrooms in. Questions about that addition?
So on the outside area for lower kids,
Yep.
pre-K and K, are they going to have any equipment out there outside that playground equipment for them? Would that be included in, not in the square footage necessarily, but in the project?
Yeah, it doesn't get, the playgrounds are in there, but and you don't see the outdoor space either yet. It's because it doesn't impact the square footage. It's not in this, but it is part of it.
Yeah.
So like parking spaces, all that stuff is part of this, but it's not built into the, they just care about square footage. Unless you're gonna build a, 5-story parking garage, which we're not.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at.
Bill, I'm a little concerned about the resource room. So you had a round table and 4 adult chairs. So would that, there not really be instruction there, or?
They are, but think about, and it really depends on, sorry, again, I'm making you dizzy here. I want to go back to this. These resource rooms they're only 350 square feet.
Oh,
And they're
okay,
meant to be flexible. So the table's in there, but there's additional space that they can use things. So if they want to have them bring their small chairs in, they can. If they're middle school kids, they can sit in adult chairs. If there's a paraprofessional, they can sit in a chair. The idea is that the adult furniture doesn't move, but the smaller kid furniture can. And that's the flexible stuff, like the different types of seats I was discussing before.
mhm. Because I'm thinking about the paraprofessionals, and very often they work in tandem with the resource teacher. But are there other spaces that
This
they
is
could
not
work
special
with?
ed though. And
Oh,
don't.
this is not special ed.
This is the resource space is not special ed. It is small group instruction for everyone. It could
Okay.
be special ed, but it's
Okay.
not built that way. This resource space is built for pre-KK for small group instruction. It's another site that could be used for small group instruction.
Okay,
So I have concerns about moving the kid furniture. Every time you want to bring a kid into the resource room, they got to bring their chair with them. That even if it's right next to it, it just feels like that's a little bit of an unnecessary lift. If they were specialized chairs, say they wanted wobble chairs and they didn't have it, bring the specialized furniture. But you should have at least 2 or 3. If it's used for small group instruction, have 2 or 3 kid chairs in there too.
Easy addition. We're really talking about elementary.
Yeah.
So we would not do that. We would not do that for. You're only talking through 4th grade.
For the resource rooms
For
for the
those-
kids through the 4th grade.
Yep. So if we're looking at this, really pre-K through 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in this section?
Now, Phil, in the equipment, special education, not special, but elementary and intensive program, do they have drinking fountains at all in this building or in the classrooms? You have toilets and sinks and things of that kind, but I don't see anything
Where are
relative
you, Herb?
faucets, drinking fountain.
Right, but what space are you in?
Well, I'm looking at just the elementary
In the classrooms, I think he's asking.
Yes.
intensive programs, but also in the other areas.
Yeah, there's in-room drinking fountains in the elementary classrooms, grades 1 through 4 and the pre-K. Actually, I think I put them in all of them, even the middle school. Yeah, they're in-room.
Okay. In-room drinking.
They are not in 5 through 8. No, they are. Sorry. In-room drinking fountains. They are.
Yeah,
I was muted. So
okay.
My fault.
And then don't you also have those water bottle fillers?
In the hallways, yep.
Okay,
That's more expensive to do in a classroom. That's why it's
yeah.
plumbing is much easier for just a fountain. Keep going.
Yep, keep going.
All right, so let's go to specialized rooms, same layout. So this is where I told you I adjusted the steam chorus, and the chorus stage. And so here you go, Laura, you've been dying for this, I know. 800 square feet for 2 science labs. They're 800 square feet each. I'm gonna adjust that. I don't like that. It should be 16 plus office. I'm just gonna adjust the square footage on that because I don't like how it shows. So again, in close proximity general ed classrooms, we're typically gonna be closer to the middle school model. But if it can be central, great, but that's because elementary doesn't always need that. But this would be built into more of the middle school science where they're doing a lot more experiments, but they could be used by a K through 4. Obviously, there's no bathroom in that space. You have multiple sinks. You have an in-room drinking fountain. Soap is pretty straightforward. Deep built-in cabinets, upper and lower with adjustable shelving. Locked closet for science equipment. A prep room, that's where it contains a special chemical storage unit. You've got the lockable teacher storage there. Some space to store student work. I'm not sure why I wrote one per classroom. Keep going here. You've got the tile floor. You've got the same thing for technology whiteboards. You've got 8 science tables on casters with chairs for up to 22 students per room. And the idea about being on casters again is flexibility. You can adjust the layout of the room. This does not have the adjustable desks. This would just be the science tables. And then you've got the stand-up or conventional workstation for a teacher. And if there's task chairs for other staff members. You've got the trash cans. You need the eye wash station in there. I see you, Herb. Give me 1 second. And you've got the Promethean board and document camera and a teacher computer.
Sorry.
Herb?
Yeah, in the science lab, I don't know too much about the equipment in the science lab, but don't they have a safety device in there in case there's an accident or something?
A shower,
A shower.
chem shower.
I know in the high school they do, but I don't know if
It's required 7 through 12,
it is.
unless they've changed it since I was in the classroom.
Yeah, well, that's not listed here.
I'll
Yeah,
add in.
I was gonna say the same thing, Herb.
It's interesting because it wasn't in other ed specs, and I wonder if it was just a code thing, and that's why. I'll find out though.
Yeah,
I'll
see,
add it in.
things may have changed. You were talking earlier, like the 800, that should be 1200, right?
Yes, that's what I was saying. It's
Okay,
1200
okay.
times 2. The 800 was just a copy over.
A question right there on that part of the screen with the stainless steel sinks. They're often too shallow. So they either need like the high faucet. If you want to put, anything taller than 6 inches underneath some of those sinks, you'd struggle with it.
Yeah, these are deeper sinks.
Yeah, so you might want to make sure that it's clear that in the science rooms, they're deeper.
Deeper sink, but yeah, as you're saying, the arching
Yeah,
faucet.
yeah. Keep going, Laura.
I'm just questioning the 3 sinks.
Are you
Oh,
saying
oh.
more?
I'm thinking 4 would be better.
Is it 3 sinks in each classroom or across the 2 classrooms?
It's in each classroom, isn't it?
Okay.
I would think so.
Yeah.
The other thing I had a question on was the 8 tables, 22 students, and I didn't know how that math worked, because 2 at a table would be 16 and 3 at a table is 24.
It can allow you more or less. You're not doing 2 per table. You could do 2 or 4.
Okay, so
Yeah,
You
some
could
might have
comfortably put 3 students at, and they're just like the narrow lab tables?
typical science table.
Okay. Because I know I always put 2 of them together and had 4 students working together. when
Right,
we were
but
doing
that's only 2 per
investigation.
table when you do it that way.
Then there's 4 of them. When there's 8,
Four for
become
2
4.
tables, it still comes out to 2 per table. So 8 tables isn't enough to get 22 kids in there. You'd need 11 tables.
You'd have to have them on the ends or,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Bill,
I'll be
with a
honest with
large
you,
room
Laura.
like this, is it necessary to have 2 doors in a science room
Yes.
for exit? That's part of the building.
It is to have 2 exits. I don't know that they both have to be doors, do they? If it can be a window.
Yeah, if it's on the first floor, yeah.
Ours was on the 2nd floor and it still said emergency exit in the
Put a
window.
ladder up and get around. Yeah.
I always wanted the kids to jump first.
Show them the way.
Okay, are we good with science rooms? Oh, here comes Ann back. Hold on.
I would say, if you're thinking that you're going to have 20 students, having 10 tables would really make it easier to be able to have 5 double tables and 5 groups of 4 at a double table for doing that's what Hall has I had that there and I also had it at the STEM school. So if that's possible, I do think that would be better.
The reason why, Laura, is I put in more tables than we need. Because our enrollment doesn't show 22 students.
Yeah.
So I'm buying additional like modeling tables, things like that. So at the number I have in there is probably the number of 2 per.
It's
because
plenty,
6
2 per
yeah.
table. And it's something, if enrollment increased, you could add
more
those tables
tables,
then,
right.
right?
What I
as long
didn't-
as,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as long as the room is large enough, which 1,200 square feet should be, you can add another lab table or 2 if you need to.
Yeah, and the thing that when you said that though, it sparked me, and I went back to see what I wrote, just on my notes. There isn't that main modeling front, and that might, I think that's actually a good thing in a science lab, and that could be your 4th sink.
Yes. Oh, so there's no lab table up at front.
I just
do
wrote it. I just wrote
demonstrations.
it in a modeling area up front,
Okay. Good.
and that would be your 4th sink.
Yeah, that's,
Anything else with science rooms?
so just not part of this, just as you're scrolling to the next thing, just try to put the science rooms on the south side of the building so that they have that great sunlight for plants and things.
Say that again. I was wondering where you're going with this. Sorry.
Put the science rooms on the south side of the building with large windows so they can take good advantage of the sunlight for plants.
Love it.
Sorry, I did a lot of experiments with plants.
I'm gonna add that into the access area. Perfect.
Oh, shoot,
We can still see you. Can you hear us, Laura? Oh, we can't hear
I
you. We can hear you
the
now.
case of, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's cutting in and out. Try it again.
Okay. I fiddled with my AirPod case and it switched to my AirPods, not what I wanted. And so that's what happened. I'll see if I can
We're good.
undo it from the AirPods here.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
technology.
let's move on.
All right. So I think I already talked through Steam Chorus. I think you get the idea of what it is. The biggest thing that's in this is things like this Lego wall could be in both spaces. You've got the kitchen in here. This is a real flexible space. So I gotta find some really specific, I'm not real happy about how this is written, this section right now, other than should we be writing in, and honestly, I'm looking at pictures as I do this, but I'm looking at three sides of the three walls, full length. This is the picture that comes up when you Google steam rooms and you look at what it is for flexibility, because I don't want to clog the middle of the room so you have movable furniture. And the three sides of the room is basically what they do is they put it's like a counter, and you just sit at the counter with a stool, and you face the wall, and your back is to the center of the room, and that allows you to space to do this. I want to find a specific ed spec, and I haven't yet, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's just something they do when the architects do it, but I haven't seen it written well yet, where I'm connecting to a workshop, the workshop kind of picture. Like, what are they hammering on? It's not a science table, I'll tell you that much. It's
The
not
workbench.
right. And so what does that look like as you build it in? Because how much of it? So this is one area that I'm trying to get some more feedback from. I got to find one. I haven't found one yet.
Do we have some flexible areas? The one thing about STEAM is that there's room for project-based learning and you can do things in teams. So you need to have some flexibility to be able to come together in groups instead of having them all around the walls. So
That's
you
the
need both.
idea. So that so I can put chorus chairs in here, which is easy, but also so the exterior, around the walls is your robotics area. You can do your workbench, but then having rolling desks so that you can, and this is again, adjustable desks on casters. So you can do this type of layout. This is probably the room that you want the most flexibility with.
I'm worried that it's not big enough if it's the same size as a regular classroom. So some of the STEAM rooms I've been in, I know you don't want to clog them up with stuff, but for example, if you wanted to bring in a loom, even if you just wanted to have it in there for somebody was doing a special setup, you don't have the option. You're limited by the amount of space that you have. Especially if you're also going to keep chairs in there because you might use it for chorus. You've got chair storage. Yeah,
We would use the chairs that are connected to the desk though.
okay.
I wouldn't use separate chairs.
Would they be stools like higher up, like bar height chairs, like workshop or stools, or would they be regular chairs?
No, regular chairs.
Okay. Okay. I'll think about the space. some
I
more.
will measure or look at the square footage of hall too, just to see what that is, because that's got the kitchen in it, even though there's a kind of a half wall in the middle. It's got a section of it in there, and we had the kitchen in there. We had the robotics going on. It was kind of like two C's like this,
Yeah.
like two sections. So
Yeah.
All right, so I will look at square footage on that one. But you get the sense of the workbench area is what we're looking for.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, you want tables that are going to stand up to some hammering.
Correct.
Have you just kind of looked at makerspace tables?
I have. They're wood, but I'm not, because they typically put a whole room of them in. And I don't want a big giant wooden table or something, because that's typically what shows up when you do makerspace tables. They're like wooden tables or work, like a butcher block type of thing. They're thicker. It's got to roll away. It's got to be able to get out of the way. I mean, honestly, if I could do the Murphy bed kind of thought process, and that's where my brain is bed, then if I could fold up onto the wall and fold down and have something that was strong enough that could go to the floor, that's
nice.
honestly where my mind is bent for
Yeah.
some of this material.
I was just questioning because I did just Google that and it came up with the wood top, but it's on wheels and then it has storage space underneath it.
Yeah.
I mean, just a quick Google, but yeah, that idea of a Murphy bed type thing would be fabulous. What you need is to get some engineering students over at UConn to design it for you.
No joke.
Okay, let's keep moving.
All right, you saw visual arts already. World language is a typical classroom. There's not too much excitement about the ed spec here. It's got the storage cubbies in it because of the, rotating kids through. Typical classroom. Small group instruction. It's got the rolling desks. You know, this is where you've got the wobble seats and the chairs and floor pads and things like that. And oh, you came back in. Sorry, Ann.
I know I was making a
Unmute.
lot of noise before I left, but
My fault.
I apologize for that. Yeah. What about, how does this, do we need anything special for our online learning? Or would the kids just bring their
They would bring a
laptops from the
Chromebook.
classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, thank you.
Mhm. All right. I'm
We
gonna keep-
have,
I'm sorry,
electrical-
Herb, can you speak up a little louder, please?
Electrical outlets in all of the rooms, is that part of the architecture? And we ask for more because usually in a classroom, especially if you have equipment, you know, computers and all the rest of it, are there enough planned, you know?
Yes, it's to code and some sections are more than code. So like the maker space, that steam room there would be more. And honestly, some of the spaces are for a heavier load. So where we have the laminator machine, they would put a heavier, you know, copiers, they would put a heavier plug in there. So you have you can put a heavier load through there. Where we charge Chromebooks, you know, put those so they're on, they're protected, you know, things like GFIs, things like that. So our materials are protected, but yes, they're to code, and there's certain ones that are more. The conference room is another one where it's like, hey, people come into a conference room and have a meeting and they all have their laptops and they all want to plug in. You got to have the plugs for them to do it, and where they're not doing jump rope to get to their chair.
So we're not gonna have wires all over the floor.
That's correct.
Like in the past.
Laura?
Oh, I swear, Herb, you're reading my mind tonight, because I was just going to ask about the electrical outlets. And so, and you may have said this earlier, but like in the science room, will they be on the floor by each, like, are the outlets in the floor or are they still on the walls?
That I don't know. Good question.
Because that was an issue for me with microscopes,
Mm.
where I did have to tape down, you know, the cords going out to the wall outlets, and the microscopes were, you know, at their tables, and that was an issue.
You don't want that.
Yeah, I did this like a
Sometimes they
surge
hang them.
detector under each table, and then they could plug in there. But yeah, to have outlets on the floor would be ideal.
I'll find out if that's code. They might not want them on the floor for liquids, but they might hang them. You see, yeah, where they come down.
Oh, that works.
How about ventilation in the rooms? Is that standard now by state?
Yeah. That's in the section you don't have yet, but yes, there's all sorts of ventilation things that you build in.
Then,
And that's whether it's a renovation of a building or whether it's brand new. You
Yeah.
have to put that in. Heating, cooling, and fresh air intake. Especially following COVID. Okay, where am I? Let's see. Instrumental music you saw. Chord stage. Again, this will have the add classroom space with no auditorium. I had this highlighted, I think, from last time. There's the acoustical divider built between platform and stage if it's the gym or cafetorium. Here's a new one. So the intervention math and ELA, this is one room, 800 square feet. Again, flexible room if there's growth. From the standpoint of a kind of a general boring room as far as the typical what you've seen, this is that type of room. It's got the tile in it. It's got this, you know, small tables, flexible seating. I think this is the one. There's we put 2 travel carts in this one to transport instructional supplies, and then movable room dividers. If you want to talk about what's important in this room, this is sorry, I just had a huge bolt of lightning strike outside my office.
Yep, just hit here.
Lit up my whole world here.
Laura's getting the same storm I am, right, Laura?
Yep,
You're
yep,
right
just
over
had
the
that
hill.
crack of thunder. My dog is like, can I crawl in your lap?
The movable room dividers is important because that's what, and we saw this actually really well done, I thought, in Birch Grove. They created many stations using the room divider, and even one makes a huge difference, and you can move them all over the places. They were on wheels, just really handy. So that's important for this space, because it creates smaller spaces that you can work within for separation in the room.
Do the travel carts have to be in locked cubbies?
I don't think so.
Um,
Tell
if
me
this
more.
is the, if this is the home base, well, if this is the home base for paraprofessionals, right?
It's not.
It's not, okay, because if, it might be where they're keeping their, you know, their materials. I don't know if those are all gonna be, sometimes it's their own personal materials.
There's
So-
lockers for paras. Once it's, is that what you're talking about, like a purse or
Yeah, so I
something?
guess I'm talking, going back to the carts, are the carts shared materials that anybody can have, or is it a cart per person? I
So,
mean, it's bad enough if you don't have a room and you gotta take stuff to the classroom. You want at least to have your own cart.
this is, and so these people would have their shared space. So, Michelle Pryor, Karen Donaghy, Catherine Allen Pomo, those are interventionists. If they wanted to go out and they've talked to a classroom teacher and said, wow, I have 7 kids actually that need that same concept. Can you come to my room? It just allows them to put the items on their cart and not like walk down the hallway with a whole bunch of books and, you know, materials in their arms.
So they're not storage carts, they're mobile carts that they would have another storage area. That's
Correct.
what I needed to know. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Correct.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead, Herb.
Phil, in the system, do we have a PA system throughout? Is that part of the plan too?
Built
I
in.
know in the gymnasium, I've been in the gym quite a few times, trying to listen to people on the PA system, and it never seems to be adequate. I think it's really very, very poor, as a matter of fact. Because, not because of the system necessarily, but because the way the gymnasium is built. It's not built for, you know, for PA system, but also in the classrooms, we have PA systems going into classroom or audio material going in.
Hands-free.
And
Yeah.
also, do we have security cameras throughout as a result of this program we have?
Yes and yes. PA system is all the way throughout in classrooms. It's hand-free. The gym is probably an outlier in that because it's over a speaker system. It's not hands-free. But there's a phone in the gym. Whereas other classroom spaces are all hands-free. And that just means someone calls my classroom and they say, hey, Mr. Stevens, can you send Mr. Erico to the office? And I can say, yep, Herb's on his way. And I don't have to pick up the phone. Or they can say, hey, Mr. Stevens, can you pick up the phone for a minute? And they need to share something private. They can do that. And that's all without the connection.
You just push a button?
The phone portion, you don't even have to push a button. When they call into your room, you just speak.
Automatic from the office.
Yep. And then if they say pick up the phone, you're actually talking to them. Yes, though.
And the gymnasium is, the audio there is pretty good, or?
I mean, it would be what you'd build, but it's right now, it's both spaces, whether you're in center or hall.
Yeah.
Neither one is phenomenal, but that's what we would have.
I hope it improves if and when we get the new building, because you have programs on the stage there, and you know.
Oh, no, though, that's really good right now at Hall. The microphone setup that we have at Hall School System is extremely good for shows. But if you're talking about the office calling to the gym, that's why it's in our CIP plan. That is an outdated system.
I'm talking about the meetings that the town has had
Oh,
in the gym there. It's really poor, you know.
yep. Yeah, we don't really have the setup for town meetings in the gym.
Yeah.
That's being rigged up to have a town meeting is what's happening.
I want to have a quick logistical question in terms of saving the recording for this. Phil, you've made me co-host, so if you lose power, we will not all be bumped off the meeting unless we both lose power, but I'm actually on Stafford's end of the line, so we're safer that way. However, if we get disconnected, you have this recording to the cloud?
Yes,
Okay,
it'll keep
So-
going.
okay. So, but then you'll come back on with your phone if you get disconnected or vice versa.
Correct.
Way Ann has. Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure we weren't going to lose the recording if you disappeared.
No, and I feel like we're doing okay. I mean, you know, health is pretty straightforward. I mean, I can,
Okay, let's
I
keep
don't-
going then.
you know, the intervention and health are pretty straightforward spaces. There're not a lot of changes there. When we start talking about special education, the first section here with the self-contained classrooms, again, this is that is approved within an IEP that a parent is part of, where small group instruction is happening outside of the classroom. That's what these small spaces are. Their students are in and out of these. They're not spending their entire day there unless it's written in their IEP, which would be extremely rare. Okay. So what's in these? In this self-contained spaces, you have to have this one. One of them has a bathroom that's a little bit smaller. They have the drinking fountains. You've got the changing tables here because you might need them. You've got some storage in those bathrooms. The multi-stall toilets located in close proximity is the room, the spaces that don't have the toilet in it in the classroom. Typical teacher storage, you've got some cubbies in here, the typical lighting. The resilient vinyl is probably better for this, but you also need the area rugs. They have the Promethean boards built into this. You've got the items for small group instruction, and the teacher furniture is there. Again, the 60-inch flexible room dividers is important in a space like this, so they can mix it up. There's our Mylar breakable mirror, or not breakable mirror, I should say. You've got some soft furniture for reading, some play equipment for centers. And again, because this spans, this particular space could span pre-K through 8th grade. So this has to be really flexible. When you look at the special education related services spaces, those are different. Sorry about that. These are more office space size. So they're 150 square feet each, 5 offices total. These have to be in close proximity to the school nurse and office area. And typically you do that because if you have some sort of emergency, some of these folks are the people that respond. And you also want them close to the self-contained classrooms. This is, and we wrote this in here, and it's actually in a raw drawing of what we did, is that we created a special education suite, and that this is what would, you know, some of the things that might be in that suite. Again, you've got this similar classroom storage, teacher storage is in there. These are carpeted spaces because they're smaller. They've got, it's basically, these are big enough for a small desk, a small round table, 4 chairs, and some of the, Michelle, here's your variety of seating, chair, stool. This is all geared towards students. And then maybe some other things like a built-in mirror for speech. And then if you think about the OTPT as a movement space, really more for PT, they then have a 400 square foot space that is geared towards some of their bigger equipment. They have adaptive chairs and you know, gait trainers. They have therapy balls. We right now at Center School have a swing room. It's built into this that we would have a swing, and that's hanging from the ceiling, would be professionally installed same way.
Do you have that swing written in here
It is, and I'm not sure why it's not there.
further down?
There it is. Swing ceiling mounted right here.
Okay.
So it's in other furniture, trampoline, balance beam, things like that. So this is their space where they're doing all of the physical therapy. And right now our OT and PT work very closely together. And so oftentimes they may be doing things together in this space. The hard thing about OTPT is it takes a lot of space for storage for equipment. And that's why this room is a little bit bigger, and not just, they have their office, but they also need this movement room. And that's really what this space is. Questions about special ed? I kind of flew through that, but
Hang on, I gotta make everybody bigger again so I can see you.
I know it.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so you can keep moving on.
All right, so the administrative area is the way I broke it down, is the main office is that reception and clerical area. Pretty straightforward. You got the total square footage there. There's a single bathroom in there. They have some storage. If you picture the center school layout, where the principal's office is tied to the front office, is very close to the nurse's office, that's kind of the way this is written. A lot of offices are built that way nowadays, so they're all within reach of each other very quickly. You do need some sort of safe in your office and staff mailboxes as part of your storage. You want some sort of counter area that's inviting. You hope that there's lots of natural light in this area. It's carpeted. You have the stations for the secretaries, some seats for visitors. Coats for closets, a closet for coats is always missed. I don't know why. It's one of those things, like people come in and need a place to hang their jacket, and you see things all over the place. I think that's important when you start talking about visitors to a building. Herb, you were asking about school security. There's 2 security monitors for each of these individuals that would be in the office. And those 2, the additional monitor, there's a few things. One is, so we have our ID scan right now, when we have a visitor coming into our buildings right now, their ID is scanned. We have that. They have their monitor for school cameras. And then they also have the security buttons, and those panic buttons go right to our 911 center. The other thing I saw in another ed spec that I really liked was this parent access kiosk computer, to be able to show me how to log in and get to my PowerSchool without someone having to come around the counter and use an admin assistant's computer. Not great practice. This is a place where they could do that, and it would just sit and we might be able to use it for sign-outs as well, something like that.
So is that in here? I don't see that, Phil.
What's that? Parent
The
kiosk.
parent access computer, because wouldn't you list that up where it says 2 computers?
No, I put it as a separate under technology, because I've been putting computers under people.
Mm-hmm.
I can put it wherever you want.
I'm just thinking sometimes the kiosk computers are like dumbed down machines. And I wasn't sure if that's what you were trying to get at, that there were different types of computers.
It's really internet only is really all it is.
Okay, so it is okay if it's a dumbed down.
Yes.
Okay, then that's fine. Leave it the way it is then. Oh, hang on, I can't hear you.
I have a question.
Yeah, pull in closer, thanks.
Phil, in the office area, you have 2 conference rooms, 2,200 square feet per room. Is that large enough, really? Unless you have a connecting wall that you can break down, because if you have a PPT or some kind of meeting like that, you have a large number of people involved. Or if you have a disciplinary action of some kind, usually they're a small conference room sometimes is not adequate. Is there any way of doubling up that, or what's your experience on that? I know my experience has been every time I've gone to a PPT or any other meeting in a conference room like that, it's usually pretty cramped. You can hardly get in. And I was wondering if that is adequate or not.
Yeah, how big is that conference room and hall where we do our
purposes,
negotiation meetings?
I don't know. I just wrote measure HMS and CMS to see size.
Because the problem is that those conference rooms become the extra storage space. So that one's also got your IT stuff. That's not a conference room.
Yeah,
that's
but this
physical.
isn't storage space. This is right off the principal's office, and it's not going to be
Right.
used for storage.
No, but that's my point is that we
Hopefully
can't
it'll be
really go
used
by
for
that room.
conferences
Yeah,
With parents and with
Mhm.
special ed people
yeah.
and.
I
who
think
knows
that room was
what
set
else.
up to seat about 8 people. The one where we do our negotiations, Herb, you know, the one that I'm talking about at Hall off the principal's room.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just don't, would that size be big enough for what you're talking about to have a room, like have one smaller room and one bigger room like that size?
Honestly, I'll have to measure and find out. The 200 is what's standard. Every ed spec had 200 square feet for a conference room. But I can't stand being crammed into a conference room either. It drives me insane. Like you can't
I
walk
know,
around in
it's-
someone's chair.
Yeah,
So I'm going to measure that and I'll find out. And maybe what we could do is do one a little bit larger if we need to and keep the other one consistent.
yeah, that sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands.
All right. So here's where everyone goes. I wrote a principal and assistant principal in here. And you know, we've talked about with over 400 kids, typically you start closing in higher numbers, you need 2 principals. And so, and I say higher numbers, we're close to that. I would envision, and this is not in what we have right now. Okay, so this is outside of the contract in the future, something to consider. I would be proposing something to look at an assistant principal that was like a 10-month position, just like our current 200-day principals, that is geared towards more discipline based, because right now our principals are packed to the gill and there's 2 of them running each building. If you put all those kids into one building and now you only have 1 individual, I'm just not sure that it's going to be effective. I know Ashford has this model, and my vision of this is assistant principal also could be a teaching assistant principal with a very specific schedule. And when I say a teaching assistant principal, it doesn't mean you can cancel their classes because they have to do something. It means from 7:30 to 9:30, they're always teaching something, whatever their certification would be, whatever we were looking for, and the rest of the day is admin. And so it could be like a 0.7, 0.3 to make a 1.0. You could build it like that, or you could consider, 0.5, 0.5, or you could go 1.0 assistant principal. That's a discussion for a different day, but I have felt like I needed to say something because I haven't said anything about this regarding what you need for administration in the building. So there's 2 spaces. They both would have offices, built-ins. They've got we need to make sure we have fire rated locking cabinets. I've been purchasing those over the last few years. You're responsible for your records. And if your buildings burn for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. You're still responsible for your records. And so you need to make sure you have fire rated cabinets, which we currently do. Nothing too exciting about these. Again, these have the panic buttons in them. They've got the monitors for school security. And then you heard mention the conference rooms. That's in there. Sorry, the bus company is calling. The conference rooms are there. There's 2 of them. I wrote comfortable seating for 10, and I was thinking along the same lines of Herb, to be honest with you, because you don't want to pack in. Additional charging stations for laptops, and that would be clarified so that people don't have to play the jump rope. And then again, part of that main office, and this is all kind of connected together. Right now, where the conference room is at Center School doesn't make sense. Where the conference room is at Hall School makes sense because it's part of the office suite. All right. The nurse's office area, so they'd have an office space. Hopefully it's actually an office space in that COVID land. A waiting room, an exam room, and a bathroom. So similar setup to what they have now. It doesn't mean they're all separate spaces. Obviously the bathroom would be a separate space. But where they can move curtains and things like that. This sink with foot pedals is important for washing hands. It was in several ed specs. This is another space where you should have a sink with an eye wash. You need lockable cabinets, and there's laws around this as far as if it's needs to be, if it's a controlled med, if it needs to be double locked. We would meet that requirement. I wrote direct natural lighting. Sometimes the nurses get it and sometimes they don't. We write that everywhere we can because we want people, sometimes it's secondary natural light over through a space. You've got the tile in here, bulletin board. You
Herb
need-
has a question. Do you want to jump in, Herb,
Yep.
on something that we just went over?
Well, I want to make sure, Phil, if you finish,
No, go ahead.
just a brief comment about the assistant principal. Usually, it would seem to me that doesn't the state law require that we have some kind of person running the school or president and administrator? If, let's say the principal is not there, then you would have the assistant principal there to cover the school. You just can't leave it without a principal, apparently.
Yeah, you make a designee. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be when I was, I was a PE teacher, but I had my cert. I was the designee. So if the principal left the building, I was in charge of that building. That's typical. This does, and sometimes you're lucky and you have that person with the certification in the building, and sometimes you don't. And that the assistant is definitely helpful, especially when you think about observations. Think about the number of observations that a person in a pre-K through 8th grade building would have to do. That's a
Yeah.
lot of observations for one person.
Yeah, you really have. How about the other towns in the area that have a K? Do they have an assistant principal?
Yes,
Most of them do.
yes.
Uh,
There's some that don't, and they're in the, the smaller range of 200 to 300. When you start seeing 400 or more, especially with the demands that we're placing on people these days, it's typically an assistant principal. They might not be 12 months, but
Yeah.
when kids are there, that's typically why you see the 10-month or a 0.5 teacher. The bad thing about a 0.5, and I don't want to talk about this too much because it's not really ed spec related. But those are the people that typically do the job and then go take a full-time job, and you lose them.
But it would be almost impossible for just a principal to say, just do the evaluations in the school like that. If you have 400, how many teach? About 70, maybe 65, 70
Yeah.
teachers. And each one requires probably 2 or 3 observations, plus writing him up. I think he would be, he wouldn't have time to do anything else.
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Agreed.
just want to note that it's now 8 o'clock, so we've got half an hour to finish up what we need to do tonight.
All right, I'll keep cranking. So I think you can read this on your own and provide feedback, but this is pretty standard for a nurse's office. You've got the AED out there. They need space for hearing and vision testing. The one question I did have, and I still haven't heard a good answer on this one, is the shower that's built to this, connected to this room. Here it is. Playroom with shower.
Mhm.
I need to find out if there's a certain requirement if it's used as an emergency shelter. I still don't have that answer yet. So
Okay.
I will let you know that.
Is there a washer and dryer in the nurse's suite?
No, but there is in the custodial area. And it's just hidden away.
As long as there's one in the building.
Yep.
They're not going to use it that often.
Yep.
Okay.
I talked about that. Pupil services. So this is the same type of thing. Pupil services, special ed would have their office there and their main office, and the curriculum offices are really our coaches. And they would share a space, which is standard for that size. They're not having meetings in there for the most part. It's just a smaller space. So they would have their their workstations. They each have their computer and desk. They have some space in there as for bulletin board and whiteboard, but for the most part, this is pretty straightforward. The fire rated 4-door lockable filing cabinets, again, is geared towards the pupil services side.
Is this the one that's kind of set up like a suite that you described?
We could very easily include the pupil services offices as part of the suite. And that would really be up to the architect. As long as the square footage is there, they can propose it. That is probably where they would be, and you could separate out the curriculum offices and put them into more of an office, space.
Yeah, yeah. Because they're the person who's going to be using the conference rooms more than anybody back and forth. So I don't want them far away from the places where they're going to have to be hoofing it up the hallway.
That's why she's going to be doing PPTs, and that's why they want to be close
Yeah.
to the conference room.
Okay.
One or the other. All right. Common areas. I already went through the library TV studio with you. This one's very, very overwhelming. So take a breath. I'm not going to go into great detail on this. Cafeteria and kitchen is straightforward. It's coming through what has been in other ed specs. The things like, I will go through this with actually food services again and compare this actually out to what the state recommends for space, because you have to have certain things. Just basically picture a cafeteria that's designed for 3 waves. Picture an in and outdoor. Food service area is separate, so kids can go in and out. They have a food storage area. Hall School is actually set up pretty well for what this would look like right now. They do have a big food storage area. They do have the office. Center School is not set up so well. The kitchen's like 10 by 10. This, you would want this size kitchen and cafeteria. So we'd be looking at 3 waves, and it says 150. That's what the cap would be 150. It's kind of like my number 22 on the science labs, Laura. The sinks, kitchen storage, all this is pretty straightforward. A couple of the weird things like, really specific heavy duty wire mesh. That's some of the requirements that you can't put food on like wooden shelves, things like that. Task lighting over preparation areas. That's a specific thing. Do you have any feelings? This is an odd one. Do you have any feelings on folding round tables? Like they're like 6-seaters or 8-seaters versus the long benches that are standard. Brianna, what do you have in your school?
There's a combination of both right now.
Does it work?
Yeah, it has to.
And
Yeah.
I just say that from a storage point of view, because when you can sit 16 students at a long rectangular folding table and you fold it up and you move it to the side versus you fold up a round table and it only has seats 8, when you try to move them out of the way to use the space for something else, it takes up space.
Yeah. Are you thinking the rectangle tables would have the stools or benches?
Could be either.
Benches are tricky for little people trying to figure out personal space. And sometimes those stools are really close together, and my calf personally has got caught in between before. As a grown-up, you have to learn to go up and over. I think the circular ones tend to have more space between the seats. I think also too, it matters if you're going to use the cafeteria space for public events, like if there's a stage in there, I would prefer rectangular, because then you have people on the back side of the table facing forward and people on the front side of the table on that bench or those seats also facing forward. Whereas if you have circular, then a back is going to be to the stage presenter or otherwise. I love coming to events at Center School where things were set up in the cafeteria, and it would be easier probably to walk around if they were long and rectangular rather than trying to swoop around circular tables. So if you're going to have events in there, that might work better. I love a circle because it builds community, but it's sounding more like I'm a rectangle gal when it comes to tables in the cafeteria. Definitely ask your custodial staff too, because they're the ones who have to move those things all the time. So they might have more to say about it too.
You convince me, but
Tracy, what do you use in your school?
The current school that I'm in has rectangular, but the school I was in for the last year, what I was going to say, they both had rectangular, but one school it was a cafetorium gym. It was all three together. And this school had a small closet that was probably extra space that had been, but it just had a doorway that they could put the tables in. So the gym could be used completely without tables on the side.
Yeah.
And I mean, if there's a space in a wall where that could be fit, if we do end up going with a cafetorium or, so that those tables can be put out of the way completely. It was, I hadn't seen that before in a school, but it was just a small, I think they fit 12 tables in there standing, folded up, right? And it worked well because then the gym teacher could.
Like, it's like at the firehouse, they have the storage room with the tables and chairs and everything fits in there.
Yeah, so that the whole space is empty afterward.
I think a mix of tables is always an option. I just want to point out that, and this goes for chairs too. I heard a couple of horror stories at the start of school this year about a child who was absent from school and was not yet a full 8th grader, but because they couldn't fit on the desks, how the desks have and because there was not a desk that was comfortable for them to fit in because of their size, they were kind of disenfranchised and stopped going to school because they couldn't find anything. And he eventually found a teacher of similar challenges related to size who helped him find an accommodation. But if someone didn't have someone like that, and I have to say, the cafeteria seating is the worst if you're a person of size. So having options in the room for both little ones who need personal space or need some help with that, but also for big ones.
If you look at, sorry, Laura, some of those pictures and you just Google cafeterias, you'll see, you'll see benches, you'll see round tables, you'll see the rectangular tables, you'll see booths. Just the challenge of some of those things is storage and opening that space up for other usage. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Laura?
I was just gonna reiterate, I guess, actually what you're saying, because I've done both models, and at the STEM school, we had round tables and some bench tables. I really do like the round ones at lunchtime for promoting conversation between students. I think that really worked better, but the efficiency of the long ones can't be denied. But they also had, which was really interesting, they had high tables that were around the sides that were used in a number of different ways. One way was as kind of a reward, like, kids who had done something special got to invite a friend and go sit at one of the high tables, or sit with the teacher and have lunch with the teacher at one of the high tables. And I thought that was kind of fun. They were tall, not real big. It would add to your storage issue, but it was a kind of a nice model. Or sometimes they had a parent who came in to have lunch, and they'd have lunch with their parent at one of these.
And they have those that fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a proponent of multiple, a menu of seating.
Okay, let's not get too hung up on furniture because we really have to get through square footage tonight.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Oh, good.
I already went through the gym last time, I believe. The auditorium is really straightforward. I mean, it's 8,000 square feet, matches everybody. It has to have the ADA accommodations nearby, changing table, understage storage if possible. You've got to have the appropriate lighting for the auditorium. You don't have to write that specific piece in. They would build that. And same thing with sound system. They build all that in when they know you have an auditorium. Carpeted aisles and concrete rows. So down the aisles carpeted, that's standard. It's typically, so that I think for cleaning, it's just pitched down. You've got the folding cushioned auditorium chairs, and pretty straightforward. Do you want to add anything to that? Or again, we're just looking at square footage is the big deal, but that's what's in there now.
How many people does that seat?
I
That
think
size?
this is 450 is what we said this was. I will put that on the ed spec.
And it's an angled flooring going down to the
Yes.
stage.
Yep.
Can we make sure there's ADA accommodations for the seats too, in terms of room for wheelchairs?
Yep.
The one thing we always have an issue with is that when we have an event that we invite a lot of grandparents, there's not enough room for people with limited mobility. Not that everybody's in a wheelchair, but the going up and down those stairs is hell on people who don't want to have to go too far. So
Yep.
making sure that it's accessible from the ground level and that you're not walking down, that you can get a close seat.
All of those would be ramped.
That's what I was just gonna ask, if it ramps or stairs, so it'd be
Yep. It's all ramped.
actually a ramp going down.
Okay. As long as there's a
Every-
banister.
Mhm. And ramping to the
Left and right.
stage also.
Yeah, ramping down and ramping up. Yeah.
Is that
You're saying
uh,
ramping up onto the stage?
right? All performers should be able to get up on there and have their moment in the bright light. Does that capacity, is that enough for all the staff and students if you have like a full school event?
Nope. Nope.
It's close.
Okay,
But it gives us zero room for any growth.
And
Because if
it's,
we've got 400 kids and 50 staff, you got standing room only for the last couple of people.
I will tell you that what the state will look at with this is that they were talking about 200 seating for 200, and that to me is just silliness. Like that's not an auditorium. I mean, it's a giant classroom, to be honest with you. So if that's what they come back and say, like, we're not going to do an auditorium for you, you will be adding in a lot of chair racks and seats. So your gymatorium and your cafetorium can be used and you can meet the number of seats. I mean, if you look at our state, I think what we have right now, I think one side of the bleachers or bleachers alone is 300. So in Hall School. So it's
Yeah, and we fill that sometimes.
yeah, but the trade-off is a lot of square footage within the
So
auditorium specific.
did we get any indication from the state if they would accept a proposal that had the two questions to the town, so that it was with or without?
They don't care about that. You can do that. It's just a matter of for them, it's just a matter of what the reimbursement rate is. If it's approved with the auditorium and because you're adding more square footage, your reimbursement rate would come down some for your overage. What we have to talk about with the state is, even with their calculations for a pre-K through 8th grade building, what
Mhm.
we're eligible for reimbursement and what their calculations say don't match.
Mm-mm.
Like they say for us, because of the programs you have to run, 57,000 square feet doesn't cut it. Their number is like 80 or 90,000 square feet, which is right where we are. But it doesn't mean they're going to pay for it. So that's why I need to take this square footage back to them and say, okay, look at your calculations. What do you want me to cut? You want me to make the gym smaller? I can't. Because when you start looking at the big spaces here, the gym, you got to have an office space. You got to have a cafeteria. Those are big spaces.
Yeah, we can't go to a fourth wave of lunch.
We could, but you're not
No,
buying
we
10,000.
can't, because then the kids are eating lunch at breakfast time.
Right, you could, but the point is, you're not saving 10,000 square feet.
No.
You're saving 400.
Right.
And that's the challenge behind the ed spec and having this conversation. So
Yeah.
The last thing that I had on here was this service areas and grossing factors. And this is what I'll spell out more. And then because I really wanted to focus on square footage tonight, I'll get into, Herb, and you were asking about this tonight. Some of those exterior spaces you've already talked about in one of your first ed spec meetings. You listed a bunch of ideas from slides. That's in the document. It's just not on the square footage side. Okay. So this would be the last piece that is square footage related. Scott did bump up the grossing factor at 30% because to more. It was higher. I think before it was like 13. And because of the auditorium, it adds more. So this is built for with an auditorium. All right. And the only thing I did put in here was just a custodial office and storage and receiving. I will tell you, and this is such a silly thing for some people not realizing it. In the wintertime, when our custodians want to bring the trash out and they've got to go down outside a ramp, a driveway through slush, they've got to bring their barrels out. Not great practice. We don't have a loading dock. People pull in to drop stuff off, and we pay extra to get it off because you have to have a specific lift on your truck to get the items off. We don't have those things. So, having a loading dock with dumpsters right there, that's near the cafeteria. So when they do the cans, they can just drop them out. When they do the trash, they can just drop it out. Tolland had a great setup, in my opinion, for this. It almost looked just like a garage door. It was almost connected to the back of the kitchen and the custodial area, and it made life so much easier. I mean, this to me is a simple thing, but this would be something that we would want to build in. I left the toilet section blank because I'm not sure if Scott had, when he put in the bathrooms on the administrative section. I need to find out if he thought one of those was tied to this or not. We're talking about 60 square feet in the end, but it's important.
Can you make sure there's drainage and whatnot if you're going to put the washer and dryer in the custodial offices or in that area? Make sure there's the right hookups for that.
Yep.
And
Sorry.
Bill, do we have to have an alternate when you go to the state? Do you need an alternate to the blanking the auditorium?
You're
Do you
breaking
need
up.
an alternate plan?
Anne, can you turn the video off? Your audio's breaking up.
Frozen again.
Okay, you're frozen now, Anne. Can you say something? Let's see if we can hear you now.
Okay, hold on.
Right
Now,
now.
my question was, when you go to the state, Phil, do you need to have an alternate to the auditorium? And,
No,
okay,
no.
are you
what I-
hearing me or no?
Yes, the reason, so the next meeting with the state is to go with the square footage and say, and show them, look at, this is where we're at, the board's at. We're not gonna go with alternates. We're gonna go with, look at, this is what we need for the ed spec, and there's nothing excessive in here. What are you looking at? What, you want us to be comparable to other middle schools, pre-K through 8th grade buildings. This is what we need. Tell us what you want us to cut. You want us to cut a science lab? I don't think so. You can't cut a classroom because we need the classrooms. You want us to not run the middle school model? Ooh, that's going to be a big argument. So the alternates, what they're going to say is, look, that's okay. It's we might need to ask for a space waiver. They might give us a certain percentage. I don't think they're going to give us 80,000. But this is what it takes to run the size to run a pre-K through 8th grade building. The one item, that might be something that the public weighs in on, that the state won't weigh in on. They're just going to weigh in on because they're going to give you less of a reimbursement rate, is the auditorium. It's a way that you could say, you know what, and this might be part of the public presentations. If you have an auditorium, this is what your reimbursement rate is. If you don't have an auditorium, this is what your reimbursement rate is. Those are things that we could build based upon the total square footage for the ed spec. And that's the idea. It's not necessarily for the state. It's more for the public.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So Phil, do you have what you need from us tonight in terms of the conversation we've had so far?
I think so. So I'm just going to go through my notes real quick. Where the only areas where I heard you say you might consider adding square footage. Conference rooms. added storage, the steam room, is there anything else? Well,
And the auditorium to make sure we can give everybody a seat.
yeah, I gotta go back and look at this,
Yeah, you might be able to do it in what you have there, but
yeah.
yeah.
I wrote conference rooms, yep.
Yep.
I think that's it. So if that's the case, that's all that's left, then it will be just a matter of going back and, Scott might say, Scott Pellman from Colliers might just say, look, at this point, you could go in with the number, just increase them and just increase 1,000 square feet, right? You're
To give you
adding.
some flexibility, and then you've got a total number you have to work to.
Right, so if you were adding storage, I think we added 2 more spaces, that'd be 400 more. If we added 100 square feet per each conference room, that's another 200. And if you added another 200 square feet for the steam room, that's another 200. And then it's just a matter of what the auditorium, if you wanted to, let me confirm what the seating is. I thought it was 450, but I want to confirm that.
Herb had his hand up.
Yeah, I'm interested in the process now. You've met with us, Phil, and do you have to go back to the school building committee, or are you going to the state with the information that we're presented you with, or are you coming back with the final draft?
So you don't have an approved ed spec yet. Right now, what you have is a pretty solid square footage number.
You're getting close.
Yeah, you're close. I think what's going to be really important is your ed spec is pretty close to, what you want for spaces and programs. What you might have to do is play the what if game. And so, yeah, I'll share the number with the, if we're, what are we at, like 83,000 square feet, they've seen that number. So if I were going to add, 1,200 square feet, I'm just ballparking this, you're at 84,000 square feet. I would go to the state and share that and see what they come back with and see what they say about state. I'm going to stop sharing about space waivers and things like that. But the next step might be the what if game for the board to say, okay, so your job is to provide an ed spec that's comprehensive, that meets the programs that you want. If you are going to provide some level of compromise, where would it be? And we all want extra storage, we all want an auditorium. Until you see the dollar amounts, that's when it becomes real, right? And so if it's not significant to each individual taxpayer, it might be okay. But if you cut 10,000 square feet, and it is significant, that might be something that you would say, we would do this but this would be the absolute, minimum that we think it would be worthwhile, without eliminating programs, being super flexible. So it's twofold, Herb. I have to go to the state and see what they say. And really it's information for the school building committee. They're not hiring an architect to design off of this. They're not doing any of that. It's really to take the number and go, okay, 84,000 square feet times X number. We think the cost of the project, it would be this. And that's where we can start to go to the public with some information. If it's a new building, there's a cost to it. If it's a renovation, you're still applying the same ed spec to that renovation. Here's what the cost would be.
The costs that you gave us some time ago,
All outdated.
they were on the low side or the high side?
That based upon inflation, Herb, based upon inflation, you're nowhere near what that number was, and size wise, we are nowhere near what was on there. So those were to make some decisions to get us to this point. But right now we're pretty close to rolling out some numbers based upon the square footage that you have here. And then there'll be some decision making from there.
Do you have any idea how much this is gonna cost?
No,
You must have talked to other
I did.
school systems.
Okay, so for tonight, it is almost 8:30. You finished in 4 minutes short. Good job.
Tried.
Are there any last minute questions that anyone has that will let them sleep better tonight if they're able to ask it now?
Michelle, last thing I was gonna say, since no one's jumping in, we have a couple local experts on ed specs. I'm not gonna say their names because I don't want to put them on the spot if they don't have time. I will be reaching out now that this is in kind of the format where I think we're close. I will be reaching out to them just to make sure they feel like we're not missing something or something's over exaggerated or whatnot. So they could say no, but it's worth a shot. So.
Yep. If you could, at this point, since we've kind of had some agreement on this document, if you can continue to color code things
I'll
when
do
you
my
make
best.
edits, that's really helpful. I know that puts an
try.
extra layer of formatting and irritation on you, but it's really helpful to us to not have to reread from scratch and look to see what the last version said and do comparisons,
Yep.
etc. So, okay.
I will do my
Herb?
best to do that.
Herb?
A quick question on cost. In the purchase of land for the building, is that extra, Phil? And is it reimbursable?
It's built into your costs and it's part of the reimbursement up to a certain number of acres. It's reimbursable.
And the state does that for us?
Correct, but you wouldn't buy the land unless you had a project.
Yeah.
You would just make a commitment to land if pending the approval of a project, if you ever did that.
Well, that's out of our hands because most of us are not on the school building committee. But these specifications are going to stand whether we do a renovation or a build new. So sleep on it, see if there's anything that you wake up tomorrow morning, you're like, oh, I forgot the thing. So jot it down because we will be having further conversations and we can fine tune this a little more. Thank you to the two folks who joined us from the public today, even through the thunderstorm, because it wouldn't be a Board of Ed meeting without rain of some sort, right? And we will see you all. Our next regular meeting is the 11th. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Thank you, Laura. Is there a second? Okay, thank you,
I'll
Brianna.
second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting now, please signify by saying aye or putting your hand up.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and it passes unanimously. Thank you all. Good night,
Have a great
and
night.
stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.